Beta particles from fragments in intact rounds is a serious health threat. Makes sense? I'm a science teacher. I'm a physicist. You can't go inhale and ingest in solid radioactive heavy metal uranium, dust. You can't get this in your body, in the shrapnel in your body. You ain't going to have a good day. Just think about this. Mixing up some Kool-Aid, but instead of Kool-Aid, you put a cup of lead paint dust. And then you mix it all together and drink it down. Same thing. Well, we're all concerned, and we're trying to do stuff. And I get another memorandum, the famed Los Alamos Memorandum. Now, this is 1990. I've been in the military over 23 years. And I got this order. Los Alamos, New Mexico. This is all quote. 1 March 1991. The effectiveness of depleted uranium penetrators. There is relatively a small amount of lethality data for uranium penetrators, either the tank-fired long version or the Gaui 8-round fired from the A-10 close air support aircraft. The recent war has likely multiplied the number of DU rounds fired at targets by orders of magnitude. It is believed that DU penetrators were very effective against Iraqi armor. However, assessments of such will have to be made. There has been and continues to be a concern regarding the impact of DU on the environment. Therefore, if no one makes a case for the effectiveness of DU on the battlefield, DU rounds may become politically unacceptable and thus be deleted from the arsenal. If DU penetrators prove their worth during our recent combat activities, then we should assure their future existence through service and DoD proponency. If proponency is not garnered, it is possible we stand to lose a valuable combat capability. I believe we should keep this sensitive issue at mind whenever after action reports are written. Respectfully, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Ziem. Now, 1967, I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. I took an oath to defend and obey the orders above me. But I'll be damned if I'm going to lie to sustain the use of uranium munitions that leave a permanent health and environmental effect. That's flat wrong. But that's what's happening today. So we knew we had problems, okay? And we're getting told to totally ignore our problems. I don't like this. Well, it took us a long time to get this stuff cleaned up. Nobody knew what to do, nobody knew how to do it, and we sat there and we put the stuff together, piece by piece on how to do everything, okay? And the stuff, you know how you get your medals for doing all kinds of stuff, sometimes you get one for doing nothing, and other times you get some for doing something. They gave me an Army Commendation Medal, and this is what we did. This is my own. Collected, contained, secured, researched, and measured depleted uranium contaminated impacted vehicles, prepared a detailed plan for disposal of DU contaminated equipment, and coordinated the plan for execution. When circumstances changed, completely developed an alternate plan and coordinated it for execution in minimal time with little supervision, and advised medical authorities on the hazards of DU contamination and recommended monitoring programs. Now, if we didn't do this work, and we didn't tell them they did to do medical, why the heck did I get a medal and the rest of our team get medals for doing this? Their daughter got medals for her to do all the work too, didn't she, ma'am? She sure did. They did the work. Well, we came back, we're writing up all our reports, we're trying to get medical care for ourselves. They're flat, ignoring all of the exposures. When you came back to get your physical to go back to civilian life, they basically had you walk up the stairs, turn your head and cough. Great. I'm in there and getting checked out, and I said, I got all these exposures, I did the work. And they said, no, nothing happened, we can't put it in your records. Man, direct orders not to put all of the known exposures in the records of our soldiers, our sons and daughters. It doesn't make you a happy camper. Well, we put all this stuff together, started writing our reports. And I got back to the University of Illinois, and then all of a sudden in the late summer of 1992, I get a phone call from the Army. Surprise! The U.S. military was found in willful violation of the National Environmental Protection Act. Willfully contaminate our environment willfully and deliberately in violation. And they said, hey, Doug, come on and fix it. Okay. And we went over to do that. And they were happy again. And then all of a sudden, the United States Senate sent a letter down to the United States Army Environmental Policy Institute and said, thou shalt study the health and environmental effects of uranium on the battlefield. But the United States Senate told the U.S. military, quote, figure out ways to reduce the toxicity of uranium munitions. Now, if an idiot U.S. senator knows this stuff is toxic, do you think some general should? But of course, the higher the rank they get, the less brains they got, you know. Sergeants run the military. Well, we're up there, and all of a sudden, we get a directive down from the Secretary of State through General Paul Greenberg, and they said, hey, Doug, Dave, and Gary, would you write up the cleanup plan to clean up all the uranium contamination that's left in Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia? So, Colonel David Lindsay, Major Dr. Boom Boom Gary Brinkley, and myself did. Quote, this is what it was: depleted uranium, contaminated equipment, and facilities recovery plan outline. Now, it went up through the Army to the U.S. State Department over to the Emirate of Kuwait. This is what I like, man. Guess who we were ordered to write it for? Which company?
Bechtel.
Try again.
Halliburton.
Oh, you got it. Now, ain't this neat? He sends us to war, approves the use of munitions, so he can get the cleanup plan and make a lot of money. Who sent us to war again? Who authorized the use of the munitions? Who's got the cleanup plan? God, ain't it nice? Yeah, Brown and Root. Now, yeah, same thing. So we're putting all our reports together, trying to get everything taken care of, and we're not getting anything done. The United States General Accounting Office put out a report in January, said you got to provide medical care, you got to clean up the environment, you got to do training and education. Now, March 1993 comes along. This is some 2 years after the war, and they're exposed. They've known from day one that uranium munitions leave a toxic residue. When they get in the body, you're going to get sick. And all of a sudden, they start thinking about what they're going to do. How many people know who Mangala is? God, not somebody you want to have fun with, right? No compelling evidence was found in the literature review to change the current surgical criteria for the removal of uranium fragments in the body. The purpose of leaving the fragments in the body is, quote, quantification and documentation of toxicological, that's a heavy metal toxicity, and radiological, cancer, and tissue necrosis risks of embedded uranium fragments by 1. Measuring and documenting uranium levels in each soldier using in vivo and in vitro measurement techniques. 2. Determining the parameters and models needed to translate uranium levels into the body into estimates of increased cancer risk from this exposure. 3. Comparing the clinical course of the body's response to DU fragments with that of other non-DU fragments to determine whether clinically significant differences exist due to either the chemical or radiological properties of depleted uranium, and determining the risk of chronic kidney toxicity due to long-term chronic exposure to elevated levels of uranium.
Who wrote this policy?
The United States Army, a written directive to the VA and physicians in the Army.
Was there a name? Did somebody sign it?
Yeah, a friend of mine did. Colonel Eric Daxon. Watch the film, Invisible Wars. Watch the film, Hidden Wars. And see the man in person. Now, he point blank stated too that if you excrete uranium levels at anything exceeding 250 micrograms total uranium per day, you're supposed to be in weekly medical care and you're going to have kidney toxicity. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So we're putting all this together, writing reports. I'm trying to get information up because I'm working for the Army again. In all of our work, we finally got direct orders out. Okay? Now, the Deputy Secretary of Defense ordered the Secretary of the Army to take care of things. Now, you got to remember, in the Army, you got secretaries and all that stuff, and you got warriors, okay? You got generals. Well, on August 19th of 1993, an order was issued. Army order was issued. Quote, provide adequate training for personnel who may come in contact with DU-contaminated equipment. Complete medical testing of personnel exposed to DU-contaminated equipment during the Persian Gulf War. Develop a plan for DU-contaminated equipment recovery. Signed, General Eric Shinseki. Guess who just sent their daughter to war and abandoned her daughter over there? General Eric Shinseki. And before this war started, the White House and General Shinseki stated specifically the warnings about the health and environmental effects of uranium munitions were Iraqi propaganda. Now, how can the commanding general of the U.S. Army, the four-star, have issued the order in 1993, all of a sudden, when he wants to use them again in battle, come out and say it's Iraqi propaganda? And he ain't never given medical care to everybody to begin with, and even though he ordered it directly. Well, in 1994, I got recalled to active duty as the director of the depleted uranium project. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a warrior. You got to understand. I have no idea why I got the order to clean it up for the beginning at the first time. I got no real idea, other than I've been kicking butt, to get back as the director of the DU project. Now, Shinseki's order was develop education and training, do the medical, and put together environmental cleanup. Well, lo and behold, I got the tasking to do the education and training and environmental cleanup. Now, I'm a science teacher. I'm a physicist. But I don't sit in some friggin' laboratory and read textbooks and try to figure out what makes the world kick. If I want to find out what happens, like we did, we went out to Nevada test site, Mercury, Nevada, Area 25. Now, the famed Area 51 is right over the hill. There ain't no spacemen there, just weird airplanes. And we blew up stuff and we burned stuff. When you want to find out what happens when you destroy stuff, you blow it up and you measure the contamination. When you want to find out how far contamination goes, you burn it and you blow it up and you measure it. When you want to find out what it looks like inside a tank that's hit with uranium munitions, you get the U.S. Marine Corps. Any Semper Fi in here? Oh, how about that? First time. They usually jump right up and stand at attention. Had U.S. Marine Corps from 29 Palms. Now you understand, these gunners are awesome. They're Marines. They don't miss. And they would get out there with their Abrams tanks and their Bradley fighting vehicles, and I'd say, this is where I want a round. They'd fire that round. We're flying down range with the round. We're onto the tank, into the tank, while the thing is still on fire, while that uranium round is still burning. We want to find out what happened. We ain't sitting like all these crazy people that are writing reports on DU, reading peer-reviewed literature. We're out there blowing stuff up and finding out what happens. Science is not only objective information, it's subjective evaluation. You gotta look what happens and figure out what does it mean. We found out that the amount of uranium contamination was so great that you absolutely have to wear full respiratory and skin protection within 50 meters of any destroyed vehicle. Now, I happen to know their daughter never ever got that stuff. Correct, ma'am?
I don't know.
But they never did. And they never told anybody else. Okay? We also learned that the amount of contamination goes out to 400 meters for every destroyed vehicle, building, bunker. Now, I didn't measure any farther than 400 meters because I didn't think it would go any farther than 400 meters. But it does. It's like going out here and breathing fine dust and particles. You're going to get sick. They're not telling them this stuff. And we can't get medical care.
Is all of Iraq contaminated at this point?
Iraq is totally contaminated at this point. Iraq was contaminated from the beginning of Gulf War I and after Gulf War I and up to the present.
So
Now,
they're all going to die from cancer too?
oh, there are people over there are completely sick because they've got all the cancers, got all the birth defects. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, there's a picture back there I understand if you guys not had the exhibit, the Children of the Gulf War here, you need to make arrangements to get that traveling exhibit here to show you what's happened to the children. I mean, the number of children, the birth defects, and everything else is astonishing. The kids with the fragments of uranium in their body, they found uranium in their semen, and their kids were born with all kinds of birth defects. Here in the United States, and I absolutely confirmed it in Australia just a few weeks ago. Well, what has happened, ladies and gentlemen, and this one they don't want to tell you about. The Gulf War I casualty count in October of 1991 was 294 dead, about 50-50 between direct combat, again, mostly friendly fire, and accidents. And I had a little over 460 wounded. So the casualty count at the end of October of 1991, when the main combat force redeployed back to the United States or Germany or wherever they had to go to, was a little over 760 wounded and dead and injured. As of May of 2002, the United States Department of Veteran Affairs has confirmed that 572,833 of America's sons and daughters served in the Persian Gulf between August of 1990 and October of 1991. Out of 572,833, as of May of 2002, the United States Department of Veteran Affairs had awarded permanent disability to 159,238 of our sons and daughters. 159,000. It's up over 180,000 right now for that time frame. Now mine didn't come until August, okay, so last August, so I wasn't including that number, but mine's through now. Now, we had a problem. We knew the contamination remained there all the time. We continued to send our warriors in between, okay, the fall of 1991, and we're continuing to send them in there right now. Their daughters over there right now, and there are other members of this post. They're up on an honor board up there. They're over there right now as we speak. What they don't tell you is that contamination remains there. And now the official count as of May of 2002, and again, I got to get this updated, 221,502 of our sons and daughters are now labeled as permanently disabled.
40%.
Yeah.
Can you say the number again?
221,502.
And the percentage?
It's over 30%. It keeps climbing.